Hi, thanks for tuning in. I had a great chat with Cristóbal Undurraga. He is the technical director and CEO of Viña Koyle. They're in Colchagua Valley in Chile. This is their coastal label. That purple flower is the Koyle flower, which is where they got the name from. It grows on their property. I had a great time talking to Cristóbal. We've known each other a long time. I adore him. I adore his wines. Please watch this chat. And then when it's over, go to gabesview.com and read my tasting notes on the wine. I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed talking to him. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit, Cristóbal, about the history of Koyle. The first time you and I met was in 2009, and I tasted the 2007 vintage. Was that the first commercial vintage for Koyle?
Absolutely. That was the first commercial vintage that we did, Gabe. Actually, that year we made the wines with part of the grapes here from Los Linges, and we were sourcing grapes from different parts of the Colchagua Valley at that time. So 2007 till 2010, we was starting with the first production here in Los Linges, and we was picking grapes a little bit in Apalta and a little bit in Lolol. Everything here in the Colchagua Valley. So that first vintages, commercial vintages, was the first kick, the kickoff to start the project, to start making to start building up our style of wines. Of course, time give a lot of evolution. I think we, as a person, we are a little bit less scared, but we are.
That's for sure.
But
well, I try to make up for it over here.
That's good. That is, so you put
it around. Yeah. Exactly. How many years did you source grapes? How long did it take for you to go entirely for your own fruit?
2011 was the first year that we've been 100% Los Linges. And 2012 was the first year that our grapes was 100% certificated organic and biodynamic. So that was a little bit the evolution of the project. I always say, I think the most exciting thing about our project was the evolution from two flows, One flow was coming from all the heritage that these guys carry in my back, all that there, my great-grandfather, my grand-grandfather, my grandfather, 4 generations in my back, of Undurragas, and all that flow of tradition in one side, and in the other side, all of our innovation view, all of our way to create a project that was quite unusual in Chile in terms of we don't go to big estates, or big or many properties spread out in many valleys that you can find it easily in Chile or even in general in the New World. We focus on Los Linges and in the coast, but mainly Los Linges. You've been here in our vineyard, it's 90%.
And you talked about the organics and the biodynamics, and I know that's something, having met you right around the time you started, that you've been focused on from the beginning. And it was interesting to me, the first time I was in Chile in 2012, a few people talked about organics and biodynamics. But when I came back in 2018, a lot of people were speaking about organic, biodynamic, and of course, site specificity. So do you feel a little bit for Chile, like you carried the flag forward a little bit on people going organic and biodynamic?
I think in that way, Gabe, we are a nice group of passionate people that we are moving forward, a little bit, and open the eyes of the agriculture in general, not just viticulture, because for me, it's the only way. If we look in the future, the working, we finally here in the wine, we are producing a kind of food. So we are part of wine is part of our diet finally. In our concept, we're always talking about the pairing of this wine with a kind of food, if it's put from here, from there, from different styles. But for me, to have, first of all, natural ingredients, it is the only way to produce authentic wine. So, of course, there are many wines who are coming, and the most of the wines are coming from conventional agriculture. But if we look in the future, you know, and been talking with many young people from just starting the university or the college, you know, 18, 20 years, or if you talk with kids of 15, and the organic is not a plus today, it's a must.
Correct. I agree with that. And what's interesting about it is, you know, you spoke about, and it's the term everybody uses, you know, conventional, but really organic should be the conventional, because organic is really the original way people were farming hundreds of years ago. We've just kind of gone back to what we always knew was right, but for a long time, people have found, what do you want to call it, an easier or cheaper way to do things, to use all these pesticides and things like that. But now we're going back to, you guys are going back to doing the harder work to create the purer product.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. In that way, you know, I always talk about the conversation with my father when I was talking about just a very basic thing, the alcohol in the wines. Mm-hmm. So I asked my father why they always the old wines from in Chile in general, the best top wines that in the 70s and in the beginning of the 80s was just red blends, was red, mm-hmm. but mainly based on Cabernet Sauvignon. And the wines that you can find, the top wine at that time was, everything was 12 and a half. And the wines, if you think and you going back 10, 15 years, people 10, 12 and a half will tell you that wine will be green, because that wine didn't arrive to a phenolic ripeness. But what happened, you know, first of all, the introduction of the nitrogen as a chemical fertilization in the vineyard here in Chile was just in the beginnings of the 80s. Maybe in another areas of the agriculture, I don't know, the cereals and all that in the 60s or in the 50s, you know, the chemical nitrogen, the urea. But all that nitrogen, who was just starting here in the 80s, create a vine much more green, with much more canopy, a vine who never stopped growing, you know, in the season. And we are in a Mediterranean weather, so we have a very long summer and dry summers. So the vine was just producing more greenness, and they didn't think I have to stop and ripe. So what happened with the Carmener, for example, in Chile? Many Carmener was picking at the end of May. And that Carmener was 15 degrees, 15 and a half degrees, or 16 degrees. Almost nothing of natural acidity. So people have to put tartaric acid as tons per tons of grapes, and tons of tartaric acid per ton of grape. And finally, the balance on those wines was not easy. What we are looking in our management, Gabe, in the last, since I think in Koyle, we're looking at big change since 2013. And even in the last 2 years, 19 and 20, bloody warm years, very dry, we have an average alcohol of 13.5 in the wines, absolutely ripe, the wines, lovely natural acidities, you know. So the vines are going to produce, of course, when we're talking about quality, we don't talking about a green harvest, you know, okay, I make a green harvest of 30% of my grapes, you know, in a 2 months before the harvest because I want to concentrate my grapes. I don't make any green harvest here. We don't make any green harvest because the balance in the vines. Vines, the architecture of the vine, you know, with 2Ks, double PO, is what the vine will produce naturally, you know. So there's many things that biodynamic will change a little bit that balance for me, and finally for me make a lot of sense of production in terms of quality as an ingredient.
I completely agree with that. It seems to be the way more and more people are headed, not just in Chile, but in many wine growing regions of the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. In Chile last year, we started with the Biodynamic Association of Wine Growers. We are already 10 wineries in Chile certificate organic. So it's a nice group.
Yeah,
As you say, when you came here in 2012, we maybe three was Emiliana, Antillal, Koyle, and Matetic.
yeah, I will tell you the thing that most surprised me, the one wasn't the only one I heard talking about it in 12, but at the time, Rodrigo over at Veramonte was taking their Sauvignon Blanc vineyard organic. He was just starting the process. And I thought, wow, if Veramonte is take this massive Sauvignon Blanc vineyards organic, then maybe something's going to happen here. And then, over the next 6 years until I got back there, and, obviously I was tasting the wines throughout that time with so many more people. It's great to see.
Yeah. Rodrigo was one of the pioneers, the organic and biodynamic. Rodrigo, he have a fantastic school and his experience in the beginning, doing some harvest there in the north of California, with Petzer and he was very close to Alan York, and he brings to Alan York to Chile, to make a consultant as a consultant in Matetic. That was in the beginning of 2002, something like that. And Rodrigo, he did a lovely job in Veramonte. He tried to change that big winery. They had, I don't know, 3 estates of almost, 1,000 hectares, of Viña.
It's a hard job.
A very passionate guy, challenging.
He is.
Change.
So full of knowledge. I feel like every time I have the opportunity to speak with Rodrigo, I feel like I learn a lot.
Yeah. It's a guy who's very clear, he loves the thing and the way that he do. And I always say, to make this work as a biodynamic, it's not just all about many people always ask me about the astronomic calendar or how you feel the horns with the manure, This is a very, I take that a very logic form of work. Finally, as I tell you, working for the best and more natural expression of your land. That is basically the concept of terroir. So when we're talking about terroir and we're looking for that real expression. So just to think, if you take out the inputs of chemicals, of herbicides, fungicides, pesticides, insecticide, chemical fertilization, I put all this thing in my place, that will change a little bit your place. Yes, I think will change. What is the mentality in a chemical agriculture, in a conventional? Yes, but I'm doing because it's better for the ambient because I kill everything. Well, you kill everything. And
you kill things that need to be there.
So finally are the vines and you, and basically the philosophy behind that is you and the vines, because it's the human is the only one, and the vines, you control the vines and you control the ambient. No, I think you must be one participant in this ecosystem, of life where you are.
Well, ecosystem for me is the word that when I first learned about biodynamics really was the word that keyed in for me, because you talk about your piece of property, however big that is one ecosystem, and treat everything naturally, and and almost like anything coming in from the outside is an invasion. It's chemicals, I mean. And so you don't want those there. And once you do that and you heal the land like you did on your property, and you described to me many times how it took a few years, but the land just started coming sort of back alive. and you saw vegetation and things that you would have never seen early on when you took over the property.
It's absolutely like that, Gabe. So finally, all that communication and all that, I look the state finally as an organism. It's like your body. This is an organism where every spot of this organism is like a part of your body. So it could be the stomach, could be the hands, could be the skin. So the borders are the skins of this organism.
Yeah.
Finally, the reservoir could be, you know, I don't know, the earth, because it's where the water go to the vineyards, you know. So of course you need some technology. So always technology will be part of, I think, like the pumps could move the water up, you know. Maybe you can use solar energy. We are doing so you avoid another input of the electricity. But finally, the compost, where you have the compost field, is like the stomach, because all the food are produced there, you know. And finally, that compost going to the vineyard to feeding your vines, because vines are also part of is the center of the production, you know. But you have to feed it. And you have your animals, it's like the mitochondria. I don't know, you can imagine.
Yeah, you can, no, absolutely. You can dive way into it for hours.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And all that finally your interpretation, because each grower will interpret his organism in his point of view, under his philosophy, under his focus, you know, his target, his challenging. Finally, and you start writing a history that you will transmit to all your team, and your team is the whole team will transmit it together, you know. And finally, you make a nice conversation, evolution. Today we did a meeting with all the pruning guys, the team. It's 6 guys. 6 guys, young guys, is between, I don't know, 35 up to 65. That's the team of pruning. These guys have been pruning here since 2010. Most of these guys, this year we have 1 new guy. So these guys always prune in the same blocks. Yep. Okay. So we was talking about the evolution of each block, and each block is different with the others. So we have the blocks of Cabernet Sauvignon in the first terrace, second terrace, third terrace, the Carmeniers in the 3rd terrace. We was talking about the effect of this year, because the pruning of the last year and the draft that we've been in the last 2 years. So they finally make an interpretation of the place. And we was happy to start pruning after the big rain, because the soil was more alive. And every year is an interpretation of the place. It's a happy time when you see that the place is recovering. And all that communication, you know, will build a new vintage. That for me is one of the key. Is when you for me, I understand that effect that in the old world, in Italy or France or Spain, with all that tradition, for me the properties that I admire, the wines that I love it, you know, that every vintage is a history. It's not just your Koyle Royal Cabernet. It's the Koyle Royal Cabernet 2017. Because that vintage is the 1 or 16 or the 15, you know, because that vintage is that special one. Or is it, you know?
I do. What you didn't say that I think you were sort of leading to, or certainly your description, those people, whether they're the people who are doing your pruning or everybody who works on the property and is involved, you included, of course, you're also part of the terroir, because people who are there, everything influences that plot of land. And so it's all part of it, and the vintage, of course. And every year, maybe maybe one person's not there next year who was there this year, or is there this year who wasn't there last year, and that affects it too.
Yeah, absolutely, and that will transmit, and it's like the birds who came, and the insects who live, and the animals who came, the fox, the cat, the wild cats, the different the horses, the sheep, the bees, the geese, everything make alive in the place.
Yeah, you know? Everything has an impact.
Yeah.
So let's get into the wine a little bit.
Vamos.
The Koyle Costa Sauvignon Blanc, La Flor. Now, this is tell me about it. I could tell you this, I know. This is a different Sauvignon Blanc than the last Sauvignon Blanc I had from you. Is this a second Sauvignon Blanc, or have you changed the methodology on your Sauvignon Blanc?
We have here, you know, we start working since 2018. We made it just organic wines for the US market. So the original Koyle Costa that you know was from Paredones, that we're still making that Koyle Costa. But this is a long-term contract that we have with a grower there in Paredones that is in the same Colchagua Valley. And take me a long time to convince the grower to go organic. We start doing the transition to organic in 2016. So this year, 2020, will be the first year of organic certificated production. So the 2020 will be part from this vineyard. And I think from 2022 will be 100% from Paredones. So we'll came to Paredones. For the moment, these grapes came from my brother-in-law property, Matic. You know Matic wine?
I do.
So they work organically, they work biodynamic as well. And I buy grapes from my brother-in-law. It's a fantastic grapes. It's a lovely product. And I think I will keep the same Koyle Costa La Flor as a Sauvignon Blanc from San Antonio, from Matic property.
But this is also, what I was also referring to is, I believe this is just stainless steel on this one, correct?
It's a stainless steel, 85%, and I still fermented 15% in concrete eggs in this case, Gabe.
Oh, it is 15% of the egg, okay.
Yeah, so my focus in this wine, that is a short period over the fermentation list. I keep that 15% of the wine that I ferment in concrete eggs, I keep it on over the fine list of the fermentation for 4 months. I work with nitrogen a little bit, that even in the concrete eggs, you have that movement of the list. I work a little bit to give a little bit more structure to the wine. And that will permit the wine, you know, to go in. My goal here is to have a Sauvignon Blanc who have a little bit more bones, you know, that bone will push a little bit more longer the wine. I don't care for that extra aromas that many Sauvignon Blancs are, you know. Here is for me more notes of citric notes, some white flowers, and the structure is a lovely structure for a Sauvignon Blanc, you know.
It's lovely structure. It's great acid. You know, it's interesting. The ones that you're talking about that are hugely aromatic often don't have as much body or finish. Not always, but this one, while it is a bit quieter on the nose, the body and the finish, both are excellent. It's got a really nice finish, and it's super pleasing. It'll last for a number of years.
Yeah, yep. I'm trying to do, you know, in this wine that expression, you know, pleasure to drink it, you know, as I always say, you know, not to make a super bomb of aroma of a Sauvignon Blanc. That there are many. This 100% wild fermented, you know, wild yeast fermentation. We don't use any extra extraction aroma or enzymes who will extract more aroma. No, it's just the grapes, you know. It's a natural fermentation. We ferment at low temperature, so 50 Fahrenheit, more or less, you know, between 45 to 50. So it's very cold. That's a long fermentation, you know, to keep the aromas of, and to close a little bit the aroma. and that aroma, will be developed after in the bottle. Even it's a wine that you can hold in open with the screw cap,
Oh yeah.
open for 4 or 5 days in your refrigerator, and it's kept perfectly.
Yeah, that other style of Sauvignon Blanc, I mean, quite frankly, they're a dime a dozen. There's a million of them.
Yeah, and
any New World region you go to, you can find lots of big, huge nose Sauvignon Blanc. Some of them are good, most of them are not special as a result.
But many wines who are concentrated in the aroma, and also the mouth is not, sometimes for me, nothing. And the acidity of those wines are absolutely unbalanced with the wines. Completely. How many Sauvignon Blancs that you can... I still remember one time that I've been in Boston. I was in Boston. That was, I don't know, 6 years ago. And I drink a New Zealand. I love the Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand. But I went to the bar in the hotel, in the evening, and yeah. I looked the menu of the wines, and I picked the more expensive Sauvignon Blanc because it was quite cheap. So the glass was, I don't know, $12 or $15. Okay, I take it back, and it was, I don't know, 3 ounces of wine that usually you drink in a couple of minutes with champagne, and I couldn't drink the glass. I drink half of the glass because the acidity of the wine was something so strange, was for me, it was too chemical and was not pleasant to drink.
Yeah, so if you're not going to enjoy it, what's the point?
Yeah. So maybe that wine, if you put at 2 degrees, 2 degrees Celsius, I don't know, 35 Fahrenheit, 32 Fahrenheit, that you can drink it because it's like kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a wine that, most great white wine, you don't want to obviously serve too cold. As it gets to room temperature, there's more characteristics come out. The wines you're talking about, you're right. If it's really cold, it's just a refreshing beverage. It's not it's not a beautiful or artistic wine anymore at that point.
Yeah. So that basically, with the Sauvignon Blanc, as I want to tell you that we start working in New York this year as a winery with our distributor, Natural Merchants. Natural Merchants are our importer in the States. It's a lovely group of people, Gabe.
They're in Oregon, am I correct?
They're in Oregon. Yes, they are in Oregon, located there as a base. Edward Field, the owner is a guy. It's a 100% organic and biodynamic focus in company, imported company. They work with wines from Italy, from Spain, from France, from Argentina, from Chile, Greece, some Estonian, and they have mostly of the countries, around the world. But his focus is just organic and biodynamic. So that makes a lot of sense. We start working since this year with Opici, Opici as a distributor. In New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Opici bought a company named Organic Vintages that was a little distributor in New Jersey and New York.
Okay.
They bought last year, and Natural Merchant was part of the distributor was Organic Vintages. So now we went to this big Opici company. So we was quite worried because when you move from a book of like this in the distributor to a book like that,
Yeah, you don't know if you get lost.
Exactly, but we've been very happy. I went to in early February for the annual meeting of Opici, and the book of Opici this year in the main page, in the first page, was all talking about organic vintages. This new distributor and the key, the center of the congress, of the meeting was they give the opportunity for each of the organic and biodynamic wineries to present his wines, and that was the focus, you know. So we was very happy. The owner of Obici was there, and the whole team, and they was so exciting to be, you know, in with all these new wineries focused on organic and biodynamic, and they was very, you know, enthusiastic. So that's nice when you start in that, you know.
Well, that's good to see that a company of that size has realized, obviously, the importance of organic wines.
Yeah, yeah.
That they're moving in that direction, especially if they're giving it, you know, that importance in their annual.
The Cabernet Sauvignon, the Royal. I was in a doubt. You have the 16 or the 17?
I have got 17.
17, yes, same than me. So, lovely vintage, 17. So let's talk a little bit about the, sí, señor. Let's talk a little bit about the vintages, Gabe. So,
Please.
here in Los Linges, where I live and where you've been as well, if I have to talk about the difference in the vintages, mainly concentrate in the climate, in the weather. We've been in the last 10 years, mostly of the vintages was dry and warmer. We've been having some mild vintages, as I always say, you know, so not too dry and not too warm, and just few cold vintages and more with more moisture, more humidity, more than humidity, some rains, you know. So 17 was one of those warm and dry. So 2020, the vintage that we just finished, 19, 17, 14, 12, and 10. So in the last 10 vintages, we have 6 warm vintages. So when we talk about warm vintages, as I was explaining to you, it's a big challenge to produce balanced wines. So if you go to this Cabernet Sauvignon, coming from this dry and warm year, first of all, I feel immediately more blue notes, blueberry notes, more between the reds and the black. So it's not going to high ripeness, you know, so keep freshness that I love in this Cabernet Sauvignon. Is one of the key for me in this dry year is to make dry Cabernet Sauvignon. So how many Cabernet, sometimes you find the analytic of the wine is dry, but maybe 2 grams per liter of sugar, so nothing, right? But you taste the wine, feels sweet. Mm-hmm. Why sweet? Because in the sugars you have the glucose and the fructose. The glucose, or glucose, how do you say in English? Glucose?
Glucose.
Glucose. The glucose is the sugar more easy to eat for the yeast. And the fructose is less easy to eat by the yeast. So warmer years, sometimes, mostly of the warm years, the fructose is higher, mm-hmm. And maybe those 2 grams of sugar, if you go and you analyze that sugar, is 2 grams of fructose. So fructose is more sweet. It's more sweet than the glucose, and you feel some sweetness. So for me, it's a matter of balance in the grapes. So 2017, I picked my Cabernet Sauvignon in the first week of March. My colleagues here in Colchagua, maybe they was picking the same Cabernets, you know, for quality wines, middle of April. So 45 days after. So it's a long time.
That's a huge difference.
It's a huge difference. So you can imagine, first of all, maybe, and I discussed with my colleagues, I already picked my Cabernet Sauvignon. So it's green. Your Cabernet will be absolutely green. And you taste it. there are zero aroma for greenness, nothing of pyracines, nothing is absolutely is
No.
going in the I always say more berry notes, you know, some cedary notes, some white
some leather,
yeah, absolutely,
a little bit of savory herb, but nothing green.
yep, definitely. And for me, the mouth is that dryness, mineral. So you can feel the rock here, that expression of the basaltic rock that we have here in Los Lingos. So what finally one of my goal in my wines is when the wines start talking about the expression of the soil, you know, and the place, the rock, the basaltic rock that we have in this property is going, and is where I think the wine start talking about the place. Is when you can describe in your wine the feeling of the rock.
Absolutely, and that's another thing that I notice has shifted dramatically, and is more and more people want to talk about site-specific wines, and they want to talk about their place. Yeah, of course, there are still the giant wineries that are, you know, making wine from all over the place, but more and more people in Chile, it seems, are making smaller lots and site-specific wines. What do you think led to that?
I think that's is the future when you're looking for those special wines, Gabe. So finally, we love wine. There are many lovely properties who produce his own wines from his property, and when you can find that and you can enjoy that style of wine. I enjoy my wines, but I enjoy thousands of wines. So actually, in this pandemic, I don't drink Koyle at home. Of course, I drink some days Koyle, but maybe 3% of the time I drink Koyle because now I have time to drink. I have a beautiful cave here.
Yeah.
Of course, this time that we don't drive, we don't go out, we don't move. I arrive every evening to my house, you know, and I put a bottle of wine with my wife. We cook with the kids, you know, and we have fun. And finally, every day is a wine. But of course, these wines that I'm looking for, I mostly drink biodynamic wines, not because I'm not orthodox of the biodynamic, but because I think are the growers that I personally like from all around the world. Even many wines are not organic, or maybe not biodynamic, but it's people who care about the land. Because as I say, my wine for me is a kind of food. So when I drink a red or a white, that I feel the sulfur in a white, I leave the bottle there. I prefer to drink. Finally,
there is absolutely no purpose in drinking wine you don't enjoy.
Absolutely.
It's very interesting. People, as in this country, in the U.S., as we're becoming more of a wine drinking culture, hopefully people will realize that more because, you know, if they got served food they didn't like, they wouldn't eat it. But people sometimes are a bit shy with wine. You know, if they don't like it or it doesn't please them, they think it's them. And you don't like it, don't drink.
Exactly. And that's the best wine for the consumer is the one that can enjoy.
Absolutely.
There's nothing more than that, you know. So in that way, for me, this Cabernet Sauvignon is just an expression of this terroir. Vinification is pretty much, you know, in the Bordeaux way. So we ferment with the remontage, with over, you know, the heart. We make a very soft extraction. I talking always more than extraction. I make an infusion of those skins, you know, of that grapes, because the grapes from here are really concentrate. Basaltic volcanic soils finally give you a lot of concentration, because we have to think that the Andes, these mountains, are quite young soils, you know. So it's plenty of minerals here. It's because there are a lot of mining in Chile, because these soils are full of minerals, you know. So all that richness that you can find in the soil, of course, you will transmit in the grapes. If you give to the vines that push to, let's go explore, not to keep it here, lazy vines, you don't have to think, no, let's push and let's go explore, go deep 3, 4, 5 meters underground, and bring it back, those minerals, So, and that for me, finally, that way, to have good grapes, make a very respectful vinification, and after the aging of these wines are the Cabernet Sauvignon is 100% Bordeaux barriques, 225 liters.
Is it
18, 20 more?
entirely Cabernet?
It's 2017. I used a touch of Malbec and a touch of Petit Verdot. So
okay.
I don't know, more or less 10% of Malbec and 2% of Petit Verdot in the final blend.
It's a beautiful Cabernet Sauvignon.
I'm so happy. My best Cabernet Sauvignon that I think we taste when you've been in Chile, Gabe, was the 2016 vintage, because 16 was those years who was cold, 11 and 16. The only 2 years really cold here. 2008. That was just in the second vintage, the second harvest here.
Those cool years, though, often, I know you probably stress them more, but they can produce some really interesting wines.
Yeah, yep. Sometimes are the most challenging wines, the most challenging vintages, because
I bet
people feel they are not good years to ripe well, but when you have, I say, when you have, again, those vines freedom, in freedom, who are able to express itself. 2016, we picked grapes, everything with 100% ripeness. This 16 was a year who we received many rains in fall, so April and May. So many grapes didn't arrive to harvest because I think that those vines was not communicated with the cosmos. I always say vines who live in the place, grow in the place, and never move, but they are alive. They have a fantastic communication with the cosmos. They saw every day the sunrise. They saw every day the sunset. Of course, in the summer, in our part of in the southern hemisphere, in the summer, sun is coming to the south, and in winter, sun is going to the north, opposite with you. But they saw all this, and they saw the stars going in, and they have all this communication with the cosmos, and I think they are able to express that. They are able because they have the communication with the microorganisms in the soil, the birds, the insects. They are a net. I'm deeply believe in that. They are all this net, this web, who communicate and transmit that expression. What will happen in the future? They know.
I think you're right, and I have to say, having had your wines since the first vintage, they've always been good, but this is clearly the purest expression of the place that I've had, and it's come out more and more over time, and I don't know how much of that is the organics and the biodynamics, taking hold. How much of that is the vines getting a bit of age on it? Probably you getting to know the place better. Maybe all of those things combined. But this is really a beautiful Cabernet Sauvignon.
Thank you, Gabe. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I think there are all many factors that will express the place. But I think to leave the place at his own, of course, going with the place, to take care about the place, you have to care many things. But finally, if you have that fine tuning with the place will show you every year the way to do it. And that for me is one of the things that I love, because I don't know, we're talking about this pruning that we start this year a month later. Why we start a month later? Because the coronavirus things, so I was thinking, okay, let's start a little bit later. I will be here, you know, we have time. But was very dry until middle of June when it started the rains, as I told you. So it was perfect because vines now, when we start pruning, the soils are full of water, beautiful. They are breathing. No, they are not dry. So vines are more comfortable now to have that cuts, to receive that cuts part of the formation. But I think was something happened with that the land told me, don't do it, don't do it yet. Let's do it after, you know. And I said,
you're like a tuning fork for your property, right? The more time you spend on that property, the more you probably feel the nuances of it and what it's speaking to you in a sense, intuitively.
Definitely, absolutely.
So tell me, when I was there a couple of years ago, one of the great surprises for me in Colchagua, and I don't know if it's going on other places in Chile, was these Mediterranean blends. And I know we're not going to taste a Mediterranean blend, but this seems to be on the rise there. And they were really interesting. Yours was fantastic. I had one over, Aurelio made over at Montes and several others. How did the Mediterranean blends become a thing in Colchagua?
I think, you know, as mainly we have a Mediterranean weather here in Chile, you know, in the central part of Chile. And we've been very focused on Bordeaux varieties in Chile, as Cabernet Sauvignon, Carmener, Malbec, and all those varieties who came by heritage to Chile, you know, when the first guys, these old guys went there 1870 something. But we have I think, empty room with the Mediterranean cepage. So Syrah, who started planted in Chile in the 90s, was fantastic. The adaptation of the cepage in Chile. After Grenache, Mourvedre, Carignan, we have some very old spots of Carignan, you know, in the Maule, in the south part of Chile. Sanso, mostly that cepage as a Mediterranean from the Rhone, you know, have a lovely expression. So we made, first of all, the Cerro Basalto that we taste as a Mediterranean blend of Mourvedre, Grenache, Carignan, and Syrah. And those varieties they have a fantastic development here. And I think that cepage have even a better adaptation to the draft period, the dryness, you know. So you need less water for those vines. Yeah. Those vines will produce more in comfort with those very cool, very warm years, you know. So I think there are big step up in the Mediterranean, with the Mediterranean cepage in the next years, Gabe.
Yeah, I was really both surprised and impressed, and just you know, after the first one I tasted, everywhere I went the week I was there, I was like, "Oh, are you making a Mediterranean blend?" Because I had one over at Cristóbal's place, and it was really good. And I heard there's a few others. Do you have one? And I tasted as many of them as I could, and I was like, wow, they were, you know, some better than others, of course, but they were really fascinating. And yeah, I hope they take hold on a community.
I think there's still, you know, a step of learning about how to vinificate the Grenache that is very different to vinificate Grenache that I always say is a kind of Pinot Noir from the Mediterranean areas, you know.
Sure.
Lovely freshness, you know, even coming from from very warm places, as the Mourvedre or Monastrell, you know. You can see, I don't know, for me, one of the more fantastic Mourvedres, Monastrell, are coming from Jumilla in this.
Certainly. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
A very dry and warm place, and the wines are lovely fresh, you know. So, or the Carignans from the Priorat, and there are many things that those varieties will give us happiness, you know, to drink.
Absolutely. And the Grenache, you know, you compare it to Pinot Noir. I agree. I think that Grenache is one of the other sort of most food-friendly wines in the world. When you good balanced Grenache, just like Pinot Noir.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a very fine cepage. So the last one that we have is the Cerro Basalto Cuartel G2. So this was the second Cerro Basalto that we did, Gabe. I will explain you roughly, you know, about quickly about the Cerro Basalto. Cerro means mount, a little mount. It's in the upper part of our property. Basalto is because the rock. So this is we have 6 hectares already identified where we have planted the Mediterranean cepage. So the Grenache, Mourvedre, Carignan, and Syrah. And we also have there a little bit of Carmener and Cabernet Franc, the tube cepage in this wine. So this in 2017 you have, yes?
Yeah. Yes.
So basically the soil here is a soil with a very tiny amount of clay. So we have between 10 to 20 centimeters of clay, and under that is a bedrock of basalt. It's a very tortuous. The tortuosity to grow for the vines here in the rocks. You see how the vines go in the rock, and the rock crack. This cracking is where the roots of the vines go, and they can go deep in the rocks. So they have a warehouse of minerality underground, you know, where they can pick all that freshness. And this Carmener for me is one of those unique expressions of Carmener. So first of all, there are nothing of, I back again in the greenness of the Carmeners. You can find a lot of pyracines or two green pepper or bell pepper notes. Here, there are 0.
None of that. And, you know, for a long time, so much Carmener was either the green or it was too ripe.
Absolutely.
This is neither of those things. And it is so minerally, and I could taste those rocks.
Absolutely.
So much about that. It's wild.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited about the expression every year of these grapes. These grapes, this year I picked 28th of February. Wow. 20th of February. So when we're talking about many people picking Carmener back, we're talking in May. So sometimes I pick these grapes 60 days before a neighborhood in the valley. Even we are in an upper part of the valley, so it's a little bit cooler for the valley, you know. And we pick definitely 45 days at least before. The yield per vine is dramatically low. We have 9,000 vines per hectare. So we're talking about almost 5,000 vines per acre. It's a very high density. We produce half a kilo of grapes per vine naturally. So we don't do, of course, spring harvest, nothing. It's a very tiny production per vine because the soil is very poor. But the ripeness of the Carmener, after we make the veraison, the veration, we take, I don't know, 35, 40 days to pick. It's so quick. And many people say from Carmener is after veration, you need at least 80 or 100 days. Here, 40 days is gone. So we pick with lovely sugar, beautiful balance, and the natural acidity, 100% natural acidity, keep that freshness.
It is completely fills the mouth, that acid, and it just it's got just enough tannin to it that I can feel it clinging to the back of my throat. It's just a really beautiful expression. It's interesting, the Franc. So
yes,
what made you choose Cabernet Franc as the blender? Is it always Cabernet Franc with this Carmener? Is it a specific site that has both of those planted on a block? or is it just year to year what makes this Carmenere or this blend better?
So if we go into the when we decided to plant there in 2009, Carmenere and Cabernet Franc in the same block, the Quartel G2 is the block G2. Because I always believe that Carmenere, part of the family of the Cabernet Sauvignon, but it's very close to Merlot expression in a little bit more spicy way. But I love the wines from San Emilion. I always love the tradition of the wine. Why San Emilion have in his area Cabernet Franc and Merlot? Some wines are more Merlot, some wines are more Cabernet Franc, or some wines in Pomerol are just Merlot. But both wines are lovely. And I dreamed in this place to work with Carmenere as a kind of Merlot, and the Cabernet Franc a part of the tension in the wine, because the Cabernet Franc for me was, in my experience here in the first plantation in 2006, was always giving a better acidity and that a little bit more angular tannins. So it's a little bit more vibrancy in the wine. And when you say that exactly amount of tannins that you can feel here, and that some notes of black tea coming from the Cabernet Franc is for me was a vision of pairing, a vision of blending, and I'm very happy with these two. And this will move from 10% up to 25% of Cabernet Franc, depending the year.
Yeah, I saw that it's 25% in this vintage. Yeah, it's really a fabulous wine. What does this retail for in the US?
This should be in around 40 bucks.
Okay. Yeah, great.
Yeah. So it's a wine, that we produce just between 4,000 to 5,000 bottles per year. We are allocated this wine every year. Is allocated in our clients. Is one of the wines that already we are just releasing the 2018 vintage, and I don't have any bottle. We just keep our library of this. We keep 300 bottles of this wine, and I think it's becoming a wine that our good clients are really loving, and that makes me happy, of course, to see the seal of the Carmenere, and to break many ideas in Carmenere, with this wine. So I think it's a wine that will write. The story is just starting. We made this wine first in 2015. This is the third vintage of this wine, and happy with that. Just to talk about the vinification. Vinification is more or less the same that we do with the Cabernet Sauvignon Royal. Mm-hmm. The aging in this case we made in big food dress. So we have one food tray of 30 hectoliters, so 3,000 liters. And we also, for the Cabernet Franc, go in big barriques of 600 liters. So after that, we blend it.
Well, yeah, it's really a super expression. And I think that because so much Carmenere has been, obviously now there's some really nice expressions, but for years, so many of them were either too big or too green. I think a lot of people who don't have a lot of experience with Carmenere would have a hard time picking this out as a predominantly Carmenere wine. Yeah,
I agree with you. So in that way, you can find, all that juiciness. I describe this wine as a very juicy wine and complex. Even if it's still young, but it's so soft and
it's definitely a case of the two things together. The blend is just so much greater than either part. It's a blend where it truly becomes something else. It becomes a third thing, It doesn't scream Carmenere, it doesn't scream Cabernet Franc. It screams this wine that you created by planting these vines on that block and treating it, the way that you do.
Yeah. Finally, it's as you say for me, Gabe, one of the challenges to finally talk about a block wine, un vino de parcela, you know, a wine from a block. So finally, it's more than Carmenero, Cabernet Franc, it's a real expression of that block. And I still remember in 2013 talking with Claude and Lydia Bourguignon. They both expert in soils. They was consulted in our property. I work with both guys. Claude, he's a geologist. Lydia, his wife is a winemaker. They're from Burgundy. The family name is Bourguignon, so more Burgundy.
Yeah, as Burgundy as you can get.
And they consult wine projects all around the world. They are very, very focused on quality places, you know. And when they taste this wine, this Carmenere from that blog in 2013, they told me both, you cannot blend these wines with other blocks. In his mind of Burgundy, there was, you must keep this uniqueness in a bottle. And it's 1.6 hectares, so it's a wine that will never grow from there. So we'll have maybe in the best years of yield 6,000 bottles, in the worst 3,000 bottles. Well, we will move in that niche.
Yeah.
But it's a wine that I think will create a match of serious wine from this part of the world.
I mean, I agree. It's a very serious wine, but it puts pure joy in my mouth drinking this. This is just really, really lovely. And I mean, everything we tasted, and you know, if you want to talk for a minute about you know, the other things that you make that we're not tasting tonight. I mean, you know, you're making several Cabernets. Still Syrah,
so
Pinot Noir, right?
For me, you know, it's important to keep focus, you know, that we are making 100% single vineyard wines. So all the Koyle wines gave are single vineyard. So the three wines that we taste today, but even our entry range, you know, that is, we call the Gran Reserva range, is coming from here, from Los Linges, is Cabernet Sauvignon, Carmenere, and Syrah in that range. There is a range that we retail in the state between 14 to 16 bucks per bottle. So it's a biodynamic, it's coming from the first and the second terrace of our vineyard. Those grapes are coming from a little bit more rich soils, so we have a little bit more clay, a little bit more richness in the wine. It's a wine even coming from more clay, show all this the sense of the place here. So I think in a wine that you can find for less than 15 bucks in the market, coming from a single vineyard, that we use the same blocks every year for that wine. It's a wine to talk also about the place.
Well, that's a really good point. Often in that under $20 range, there's no consistency of source necessarily. It must be from Colchagua, but it's not necessarily from those vines or even a specific vineyard. So the fact that at that price point, you're sourcing the same place because it's your place, even for an entry-level consumer, that's really good confidence for them to know that they're getting, you know, obviously the vintage is going to vary, but they're getting the same fruit every year. You're not down at the flea market buying the you know, whatever's available.
Yeah, and that is true. As we as a consumers, for me, when I find that kind of wine for that price, this is a wine that I want to taste, because if I like it this year, I know that the next year the grape will come from the same place. So they are consistency. They are not a standardization, because a standardization, other thing is when you sourcing your grapes from wherever, as you say, but finally the recipe is the same. So
yes,
and they try to make every vintage the same, you know.
those are completely different kind of wines. We call those Coca-Cola.
Exactly, Coca-Cola, absolutely. So in that way, you know, we have that Gran Reserva, that is our entry, and we are doing a nice participation in the market. We are developing nice things in the States, in Europe. You know, we are selling really good with the Gran Reserva. After the Gran Reserva, and we're going up in our field, in our vineyard, is the Koyle Royal. So the wine that we taste, you know. Sí, señor. We have there Cabernet Sauvignon, Carmener, Syrah, and we also made a little cuvée of Malbec and Tempranillo in Royal. So both are, all the grapes came from the second and the third terrace. I think Royal is becoming one of our flagship of the winery.
Yeah.
You know, these wines came from very high density plantation. You know, for me have the same process that mostly of the top wines in the world have. You know, we personally, I believe in all the care of the grapes as the main thing, but the respect for that evolution and the origin of the grapes. When you have less than a kilo per vine, you have vines who are planted in a high density with such expression of minerality. And this is a wine that will be in the market for between 20 to 24 bucks in the US market, 22, 24. So I think it's a wine that you can expect. You have a happiness when you drink it for that price, and that's my goal. I love to find that wines back again, you know. So a wine in that niche, one of my goals as a producer is to sell products that my clients say, "Oh, this is such a cheap price for this quality. I'm not looking to next year I will put a double price." No, we will keep it there. We can go in with that price. Of course, if in the future we will keep the offer. We don't have more land to plant. Maybe in the next generation we'll plant up in the top of the mountains for new wines. But for the moment, we produce this volume, and this is the volume. And of course, if the demand move it, we can move a little bit the price, but we'll not produce more bottles. We will not.
What is your total volume?
Last year we produced a little bit more, 600,000 bottles. So a little bit more, 500,000 bottles.
Yeah.
And we can arrive up to 700,000 bottles.
700,000. Okay. Yeah. That's still not huge in the grand scheme of things. You're still.
Yeah. So between 60 to 70,000 cases finally, you know, in terms of cases. Mm-hmm. And up to the Royal, we have the Cerro Basalto range, where we have the Mediterranean blend that you already taste here in Chile. Gabe, we have this Carmener and Cabernet Franc, and we just released 1 month ago in Chile the Cerro Basalto 100% Garnacha.
Oh, is that coming to the US?
That will come the next vintage, because the first vintage we did just a little bit more than 2,000 bottles. So okay. I allocated in 3 clients, one in UK, a little bit in Chile, and in Hong Kong, and it's gone. And it's very old clients who are buying very good in all these new products. And I think I definitely say 2019 will be in the US. So, but I have a couple of bottles in my library to bring with me for the next tasting in there.
Well, I was going to say, hopefully, you know, when that makes it to the US, we'll be across the table from each other, not across laptops from each other.
Yeah, definitely. And also I have a nice news from the Cerro Basalto. In the lower part of the Cerro Basalto, we have a block who was not part of the Cerro Basalto. It's a block of Cabernet Sauvignon. But this Cabernet Sauvignon, since last 5 years, was showing a lovely expression of Cabernet Sauvignon, and we use some every year in the Royal Cabernet Sauvignon. But if that is a block of 1.2 hectares, and we start developing the soils very in detail of this block, and we find that block 0.2 hectares of basaltic, same description of the basalt. So it's just 0.2. So we produce there a little bit less than 2 tons. This year we vinificate that separate, and we have that Cabernet Sauvignon 100% separate from this 2020 vintage.
So a single block cab.
Yeah.
Cool.
We'll see. So I'm very excited about that, Cabernet Sauvignon. Maybe it will be a new Cerro Basalto 100% Cabernet Sauvignon.
100% cab, cool. And you're still making the Pinot Noir from Paradones as well?
Yes, sir. We have in Paradones, we have the Koyle Costa range. So we have the Sauvignon Blanc that is one of the classic that we make. The Sauvignon Blanc is a Sauvignon Blanc in more 1 year over the fermentation lees. It's a Sauvignon Blanc more in the Loire style, creamy and mineral. It's even today, if you drink the first vintages, 11, 12, 13, those Sauvignon Blanc are the evolution is fantastic. And the Pinot Noir from there, we just released the 2017 vintage in the market, the Pinot Noir from Paredones, and they are showing lovely, very, very nice. But both wines, Gabe, are not organic yet, so we are not bringing it to the US till we have the certification. The idea is to go in that focus, just have
organic. Yeah, I get it.
Make it easy in the communication. We also have some wines made in Ithaca. It's 5,000 bottles per year that we make from a tiny grower there. 80 years old vines. We make a Sanso and we make a Muscat there.
You make a Sanso Rosé, right?
And we make a Sanso Rosé.
I had it a couple of years ago at Provine with your brother.
Absolutely, yeah, I remember with Max. Yes, sir.
Max, yeah. And
we will release next year in the US. No, actually, this maybe in October. We made our first rosé from Los Lingues, from Grenache, 100% Grenache, and it's coming from a block that we make with a labyrinth. It's a labyrinth with the flower of the Koyle. It's a very special spot in the first terrace. It's a Grenache, and will be this our second vintage of this rosé. Last year we made 2,000 bottles. This year we will make 4,000 bottles of this rosé, and we'll put a little bit in there, but definitely it's a special rosé, fermented part in barriques, part in concrete eggs.
Wow. I look forward to tasting it. I have to tell you, I love the prominence of the flower on this label. This is beautiful. It's purple happens to be my favorite color, so that doesn't hurt. But I love that it's bigger on the label than it used to be.
Yeah, I'm so happy with the development of this bit. These are the Koyle flowers. So, and I think for me, this label, when we designed this with my friend, it's a friend of mine who made the draw, and transmit all the freshness that you can find inside of this Sauvignon Blanc. I'm so happy with that, and looking forward, to keep pushing up, looking forward to move a little bit overseas, but this way that we are communicated now by Zoom is unique, no? Gabe.
Cheers. Until,
Cheers. Huh?
until we can put our glasses together.
Yeah, exactly.
Real. Salud.
We can imagine as well the sound of the glasses.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you, Cristóbal. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate your time, Gabe, to share this evening and to share my